Welcome to another Books and Things with Tom. Today is February 18th. We are over halfway through the month. Isn't that a nice thought? Because March is a little bit better, although we really can't complain. Anyway, today my guest is Pat Moody. Actually, Pat was on my show about 3 years ago.
A couple times.
Yeah.
Thank you.
She's a life tribute specialist, a celebrant and officiant.
Officiant. There's an I in there. It's okay.
Welcome, Pat.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you could come today.
Nice to see you again.
We're
Thank you
going to
for this.
discuss some grieving and basically what you do,
Thank you.
so everybody can know what you do. And I really appreciate you coming on because you can tell these people, introduce them to something that you do that very few people do around here. Probably none.
No, there's others. There's a
there?
couple of others. Yeah. Thank you.
I guess some of the funeral homes are doing it now, too.
Some funeral homes have trained their own celebrants through the same organization that I've been trained by.
Now, what does a celebrant do?
A celebrant is a person who does a highly focused service that reflects the life of the loved one, and it's extremely personalized, very unique, just as the person has lived their life, and geared toward celebrating their touch upon the world and upon their loved ones. It is not irreverent. It is not lacking in anything that the family needs. If they need, we often incorporate music. We incorporate ceremonies like sand ceremonies, candle lighting ceremonies. Really, the sky's the limit. I tell families, if it's not illegal or immoral, let's do it. Because it should be what they need it to be, and that's the byline of the celebrant movement, meeting the needs of the family at the time of a loved one's death.
Well, I've been to obviously a couple of yours, and what amazes me is that you tell a story about the person, and half the people around there don't know these things. And it's nice, like you say, you're celebrating the person's life, what they did,
Right.
and otherwise, he's dead, bury him.
Well, we've become a disposable society.
Yeah.
Not in just our things, things that our parents repaired and kept going, the car, the washer, things like that. We go, oh, well, get another one.
Yeah.
And we kind of did the same thing with funeral service.
Yeah.
We shied away from having service, having ceremony, with the increase in cremation in society.
Yeah.
People took the word cremation and thought it just meant immediate disposition.
Yeah.
Just be done with it and move on.
Yeah.
Families also shifted, and my own father said, oh, I don't want anything, I don't want any calling hours, people can't come see me now, I don't care if they see me later, things like that.
Yeah.
What it does is it robs the family members of the opportunity to begin their grief journey.
Yeah.
It robs them of the support at the time of the loved one's death.
Yes.
It robs them of the ceremony of it and getting their subconscious to recognize the fact that this has happened.
Yeah.
100 years ago, when we handled the loved one's death in the home, we had the wake in the home.
Yes, I know.
Yep. Yeah, and it was a lot less than 100 years ago, but I'm saying
Yeah.
it was more of a pattern back then.
Yeah.
The entire family unit became accustomed to this thought, and it was a better psychological foundation to move on in the loss. We stopped doing that, and as a good friend of mine and my mentor, Doug Manning, said even when his own brother died, his sister-in-law chose immediate cremation, and they had like a 20-minute service. That was it. No cremains present, no body present, nothing. He said his brother lived on in his heart as if he were missing in action.
I remember my first funeral of cremation, and it was something missing.
Right.
and we had a graveside service, but you're sitting there looking at this little box, and I'm thinking, I needed to see that person.
Your mind can't
Yeah.
wrap itself around that.
Yeah,
It's
and
hard
it's just-
to
yeah.
it's hard to fathom that that could possibly be.
But now they also do open casket
Sure.
and then cremate, so they burial is maybe a couple of days extra. And that's what I want.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
let-
Well, make notes.
If I'm still looking good. But I think
No.
that's a tremendous thing.
It is, and it is, again, when that was the custom, then people stepped off on a healthier grief journey.
Yeah.
And statistically, from what they can, put together, those who do statistics, there was a lower incidence of emotional troubles after and into the future for the loved ones that were left. Lower incidences of depression, lower incidences of divorce. Many times divorce occurs after the loss of an immediate family member.
Yeah.
And it's all born out of unresolved grief.
Yeah. Yeah, especially children.
Absolutely.
It's very high.
It's extremely high.
And it's, you mentioned funerals out of the home. I saw one. Actually, I saw about 3. My grandfather was buried out of the home, and I was about 6. And I can remember it just like it was yesterday. And I remember going over and touching him, and everybody would go, he's touching him, he's touching him. I don't know
Really?
if that was bad or not.
No, it's not bad.
And
It's not bad.
but everybody's sitting in there. Now he's in the living room. Everybody's in the kitchen and drinking.
But what were they doing?
Drinking and having a hell of a time.
And telling stories.
And telling stories
about him.
Exactly.
That's
You
what the
remember that
celebrant.
stuff, yeah.
Exactly. That's what the celebrant movement has brought back.
And that's what you do. And I know you go
Because-
into the house and you cull
Right.
as much information as
Well,
you can.
get the people who are gathered there.
Yeah.
I don't know this person. That's the first thing I'll tell them. I didn't have the privilege of meeting your loved one.
Yeah.
But in order to create this ceremony and this service in their honor
Yeah.
and for your benefit, would you please share with me some of your memories? The greatest thing that can happen is if they get into it and begin to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of
You just sit there and-
metaphorically slide back a little bit
Make notes.
and just start making notes. And it's been so much fun, and I know that's a peculiar phrase.
No, 'cause
But
it's-
when people will say afterwards, "Who told you that?" and I'll say, "You did," because I didn't have anything to go with beforehand. They even forget they shared
You've
this or
also
that.
got the artistry of being able to write it,
Well, thank you.
and
Yeah.
that's important.
Yeah, it's a great deal of satisfaction to put somebody's story down on paper. But it evolves. It isn't something either. Sometimes it goes in a direction that I'm intrigued by what's coming together with all these puzzle pieces they've given me.
Yeah.
Putting it together, things chronologically. And we celebrants, we do a little research. I look up, take the person's birth date, and look up and see what was going on in the world at that time.
Yeah.
Have somebody that was born, excuse me, in 1938 and born shortly before the 38 hurricane hit.
Yeah.
And it was so devastating here in this area. There's just a little piece in that service about those parents dealing with not only taking care of themselves, but sheltering a newborn child.
Oh, yeah.
What was their challenge like at that moment, and that's kind of just a little key point to this service that draws people in that are there at the funeral and draws them in, and they really want to hear more of the story,
Yeah.
so.
I'd like to point out that her email address is going to come up here shortly, and if you have any questions, please write her. Because
Please do.
She's got more information floating around than we'll ever cover this half hour. And I forgot to mention, you're also a licensed funeral director.
I am. I enjoy that work. This is the essence, really, of that.
Yeah.
That working with the families and making, again, the funeral experience be something that they need it to be. And this was just an opportunity that came about when there was a shift in my career. And if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have been on this path either.
It's so important that the funeral director be nice and treat the ones behind right, because I know when my son died, I was just, they did everything.
They have to. We have to.
Yeah.
We have to step in and help you. And it's a matter of, again, anticipating the needs. As simple as opening a door. But that's a metaphor for everything else that we do for the families.
Yeah.
You know, it's as simple as opening that car door for you so you can get in and out on the day of the service.
Oh, yeah.
But that's just an example of all the things that go on behind the scenes. There's so much that's involved.
Now, I had Steve King on one day, a couple of years ago, and one of the things that he and I agreed on was go visit a funeral home now.
Absolutely.
Because it's the worst shopping trip we've ever been on.
Yeah, it is. I mean, anything you can get done and get written and put in a file somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's on a Post-it note. If it's an idea that comes to you and you think, I want my family to know this, or I want someone, I'd like this included at that time, start a file. Throw it in your file cabinet, put a label on it that says, my funeral wishes, or whatever you want to call it. Put it in there. And there are planning books that every funeral home has that will give you, free of charge. Just get your thoughts all in one place.
Yeah.
Because the saddest thing I think any funeral director hears a family member say is, we didn't ever talk about this.
Yeah.
I don't know what Mom wanted.
Yeah.
I don't know what Dad wishes were, or they would never tell me.
Yeah.
And so that person is left to guess. And your funeral arrangements don't always fall to someone who knows you very well.
That's true, too.
And so handling that, is even more difficult if you don't know the person that well. We don't all have a lot of family wrapped around us.
No.
And so when that comes, it might fall to a close friend. It might fall to an acquaintance. It might fall to a lawyer.
Yeah.
Or, some other, a financial advisor. Put some thoughts and
hardly
wishes.
even knows you.
Exactly. That they really don't know you,
Yeah.
but want to give you a dignified, final disposition.
And if you're married or have a significant other, both go, because you don't want to surprise them and say, what do you mean there's nothing?
Yeah, absolutely. And when, when a divorce occurs, let's put it that way, well then legally it falls to if there's a child.
Yeah.
If there isn't a child, legally it falls to a parent. If the parents are gone, then it falls to a sibling. Now, you may be, you face that yourself, so you know how that was. They call it the talk of a lifetime. And if you can get your family members to, I had a woman come in one day when I was still working full-time as a funeral director, and she came in and she said, I'd like a few of those planning booklets. I said, okay, that's fine, and I gave her a couple, that's what she wanted. And I said, but take your time. And she goes, oh no, and this was, I think it was the first part of November. And she goes, oh no, I have to get this filled out right away. And I said, okay, all right. And she says, all my children are coming for Thanksgiving dinner. I will have a captive audience. We are going to discuss this.
Oh, good for her.
And I thought, that's going to be a heavy Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
But, she was very wise to do that.
Yes.
And she wasn't facing disease or anything at that point in her life, but she wanted to check that off of her mental list of things. And, once it's done, it's done.
Oh, yeah. And the other thing is you got to lay out who gets what. And
if you wish to, yeah, exactly.
And that's important because I'm going through a bunch of paperwork now, and I'm thinking, okay, nobody wants that, nobody wants that. And then I'm thinking, if I don't put something down here, he's not going to want that either.
True. Yeah, exactly.
So
I mean, it's unfortunate that at the end of our lives, all those things that we think are important can tend to become rather insignificant quickly. especially if it falls to someone else. You know, so anything that you can pre-plan, pre-think about, you're not only going to make whoever is left to take care of your things, not just your estate, but your wishes, very grateful. But you're going to help the funeral director a great deal too, because they, you know,
I've got mine all
it's a
made
hard
out.
job.
I'm probably going to change a lot of it.
I know
but-
you do.
but
And that's
today-
the other thing too, is it's not literally carved in stone. You can change your mind.
Absolutely.
You know, it's just ideas. It's
Now,
just
the other thing you
ideas.
do, and I remember the little packets of, like Charlie was puzzle and
Oh, right. Okay.
cereal and
Well, that's called a token gift. And the reason, if you go to a celebrant service, a celebration of someone's life, sometimes there is a token. If there's a resounding theme that comes through when I'm visiting with a family, if there's something that if they were to lay their hands on that or see that, they would say, oh my God, that reminds me of Charlie.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why I will bring them together and have some of those there for people to take.
Yeah.
And take with them and keep it as a token that reminds them of this person.
Yeah. And then
So
the other
that-
one was the Hershey bars. The miniature Hershey bars. But that's neat because you look at it, you go, oh my.
Yeah, exactly. I think I probably did I put a label on the
Yes,
Hershey bar with
yes,
the
you did.
person's name and dates on them?
Yeah.
You know, so
I ate the candy.
eat the candy, keep the wrapper. I mean, exactly. I mean, well, the point of the puzzles was I think, if I'm recalling Charlie's, just the pieces of the puzzle of his life. Okay. So all of those represented,
Yeah. Yeah, he
all
liked
these
to-
different
he liked
facets
to do
of his
puzzles
being.
and he ate Cheerios.
yep, and he ate Cheerios all
Yeah.
the time. Yeah.
See, now I would never known that if you hadn't mentioned it.
Right, and somebody shared that with me
Yeah.
the afternoon of the family conference, and so that went out. I had a woman that I did a service for who had been a nurse. She loved to knit and crochet, and what was the third thing? There were three things, and I just came up with that little packet. But I put a little tiny Band-Aid in there, you know, which reminded people of her nursing and her caregiving. And then there was a little piece of, and her favorite color was pink, so there was a little piece of pink yarn in there. And you pick that up and you think of Mary,
Yeah.
you know. It just reminds you of them, and I just put her name and dates
And
on
that's
it.
what's neat. It's
Right.
you know, you got pictures usually, but but something like that is just so personal.
Yeah, it was. And, you know, one family, everybody who spoke about this one person who passed away very suddenly, and he was quite young, said, how can he be gone? He was the rock of the family. He was the rock. He was the one everyone went to.
Yeah.
So we all had little stones in a bowl. People came up and took a stone.
Yeah. Oh,
you
that's
know.
cool.
I met up with someone months later. I was in a area department store, and someone walked up to me. They remember me because I'm standing in front of a room of 100 people.
Yeah.
I don't remember all of them. I try, so
Yeah.
everyone knows I will try to remember you. But this gentleman came up to me and introduced himself and said, "You don't remember me, but I was at so-and-so's service that you did." And I thanked him for stopping. And he said, "I need to thank you for something." And he reached in his pocket and he pulled out this little stone.
Oh, no kidding.
And he said, "You gave me a connection to my friend."
Huh.
It was just a little stone, but to him it was everything.
Yeah.
And he'd been carrying that in his pocket since the day of the service.
Wow.
So you never know how much this is going to touch someone. You
Yeah.
never know how much it's going to mean to
Yeah.
them.
No, you don't. And it's well,
You
like
don't.
Charlie's been gone, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, I think.
Yeah.
And I still remember that, and I still have it.
See?
The Cheerio.
See?
I was thinking about eating the Cheerio, but it wasn't as good as the
It's going to
Hershey.
be pretty old. That's going to be a pretty dry
Now, you're
Cheerio.
also an EMT.
I had been an active EMT. My affiliation with emergency services is well over 20 years now.
Wow.
When I decided to go into funeral service, I had to kind of let being an active EMT go by the wayside because two careers, two interests
Yeah.
that could be 24/7.
Yeah.
You know, my husband was perfect. He gave me the perfect analogy. He said, you can't hold all the balloons. Sometimes you have to let something go.
Yeah.
So I stepped away from that in the respect that I didn't ride the ambulance anymore as an active EMT, but I went into counseling with the critical incident stress management team. And so that is when a department, police, fire, ambulance personnel, nursing, hospitals, have an extremely traumatic situation, they can activate the team, call and say we need help, and we go out, all volunteers, and we go out and we will sit with them, and we're peers.
Yeah.
We create a safe atmosphere where they can discuss what's happened to them. You know, because you can imagine there's not a lot you can say to anybody because of HIPAA requirements and things. Everything we do is extremely confidential. We have to adhere by all of those, you know, medical rules and regulations. So it doesn't. No one divulges pertinent medical information that isn't for that. But it gives them an outlet and a safe place to experience their feelings.
That's cool. And it's funny you mentioned that because my next week's guest is an EMT, paid fireman, and has PTSD.
PTSD. This is what we hope to prevent.
Yeah, and it's
PTSD.
So he's very interesting. He wrote a book about it. And I read the whole book, and it's just the things he went through. And up until then, I really didn't think about PTSD because I've only heard it about military people.
We assign that to the war veteran.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, in the big cities, even in the small cities, it's a war zone out there.
Yeah.
You think about what this area is going through right now with the tainted heroin overdoses.
Yeah.
It's horrible. It's just horrible. It's coming rapid fire. And these departments in the area are dealing on a daily basis with what they dealt with maybe once or twice in their career, or once or twice in a year. And now it's almost daily here, right here in New London County. So it, you know.
You get some real junk stuff out there. And
it's awful. It's
and
really
it's killing
awful.
people.
It does. Yep.
Which brings me on to the next subject that you sent me, the many paths of grief. And you have joined you just showed me the poster, and my mind, because it's so old, has forgotten.
Oh, okay. It's a brochure that I showed you that I'm very proud of. I was trained by the Insight Institute in Oklahoma City, Insight Institute of Celebrants in Oklahoma City. Doug Manning, Glenda Stansberry brought this model for celebrants to this country about 12 or 15 years ago. Very popular way of memorializing people in the UK, Australia, New Zealand. It wasn't big here.
Yeah.
He's a retired minister, and he's written a lot of books about grief. He's an author. And he just saw this as something that was so needed in this country, this way of memorializing people with the work of a celebrant. So they brought this to this country. Well, wonderful people, small family owns this publishing house, and this was another direction that they added to that, was going out and training celebrants. And they train funeral directors from all over the country, but they train the layperson too. I took the training originally in 2004 to fulfill CEU requirements to keep my licensing up with the state of Connecticut as a licensed funeral director. And so that's when I first met them. In 2007, I did the training again as a refresher and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I was invited the end of 2014 to be one of the first 3 people that they trained as trainers, because the need for these courses is expanding, and the 2 of them are finding that they're on the road all the time, and if they ever want to see their families, they have to they have to create a few more trainers. And so I was so honored to be one of the first 3 that were asked to become trainers.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
great.
you. Thank you.
And I know that every time you do this, it's heartfelt.
I just some days just shake my head and sit back and go, I can't believe I'm allowed to do this in my lifetime.
No,
This is awesome.
There are things that you do that you,
Yeah.
thank God, because you're
Absolutely.
so able to do it. My TV
Yeah.
show, I love to do it.
Exactly.
And we've only got a couple of minutes left. I wanted to touch on another subject that I'm starting, which is I have a Facebook page called Loved Ones Lost, and we're going to put it out live. I'm going to starting a group, and it's going to have sessions down at the Groton Regency, and once a month we'll be meeting, and anybody who's lost a loved one can come down, or you know somebody who has, you can stop down and listen to us. And we've got a date right now of March 21st, and it will be on the fourth Monday of the month. And but come down, because I think one of the things in that group, that grief thing of 8 tips was find conversation with others or connection with others. And I started this way before I even read that.
Exactly.
But
finding like-minded people who've gone through similar experiences.
yes,
And in an uplifting way.
yeah.
In an
Yeah.
uplifting way helps a person on their grief journey.
Yeah, because you can't keep dragging it down and going over it and over it and over it. And I went to one of those classes, and it's just too much. So you try to. And Rod Steiger, I think it was on TV once, and he was suffering from depression. And he said, he tried to talk to his friends about it. He said, then when I ran out of friends, I get new ones.
Oh, no.
And it's true, because your friends don't want to hear the story that many times. So you got to find somebody else to talk to.
True.
And if you talk about it enough, the tears stop. You
Someone
get
shared
used
with
to
me
it.
once, every time they told a story, a
Yeah.
memory about their loved one, they gave away a little piece of the pain.
Yes,
I thought that was a perfect metaphor.
that's exactly right.
They gave away a little piece of the
Yeah.
pain, and they could move on. And
Just-
just the fact that someone will listen when we need to talk
Yeah.
is very, very healing.
And that's the key, is you got to find somebody. And when I do my seminars, that's what I tell the people. I said, I'm luckiest person here, because I get to talk about my son, and you're not.
Yeah.
And it's very important that you should talk about him.
And, we shouldn't feel bad about, bringing up a person's lost.
No.
You want people to ask about Todd.
Yeah.
You want people to say his name. We're
Yeah.
not going to open up a wound. The wound is already there.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to help your friend heal if
Yeah.
you ask them to talk about that
It does make
child
you
they
feel good
lost.
that,
Or
you remembered.
you remember
Yeah.
Todd? That's right. And that way opens the door. And if it's a day you don't feel like talking about it, you'll say so.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Thank you for
Yeah.
doing that, but today I'm just not up to it. That is going to bond a friendship. So
Well-
I'm glad you're doing that group. That'll be great.
Thank you. I think it's going to be. I just got the 1 minute notice here, so we're running out of time. I just want to remind everybody that we got fish fries at the Park Deck VFW every Friday during Lent. Next week, I mentioned Paul Barnes is going to be on. He's an EMT, and he has PTSD. Don't forget to go to the sec-tv.org and watch the past shows. They're all on the YouTube. Winter's still here. It's very nice out today, but the nights are cold. And you really should cuddle up with a good book, and you should be reading. And I'll see you next week, and thanks for watching. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.